thing billowing, bursting forth with the power of 10 billion butterfly sneezes.
This is Wine, Money, and Song. And if you're interested in wine and you want to learn about the best values in wine, please subscribe. So in my 40 years of being in the wine business, I used to lecture wine classes. I used to go into my customers, and a big part of my job was educating people on wine. And some of my students who took my class, one of the questions they always ask, what's the best or what's the most memorable wine you've ever had? I will let you know what that is in a future episode, but I want to talk about wine's importance as we experience things in life. I read a book about 15 years ago called Wine and War, and it was about mainly World War II in France and how it affected the country and how it affected the wine business, the Nazis occupying France. And there was a great story about Gaston Huet, whose family runs the most famous Vouvray estate. And if you ever have a chance to try those wines, you should. The Cuvée Constance, which is a dessert wine, is one of the most spectacular dessert wines you could ever have. But let me go into the story of Gaston Huet. They knew he was going away to war. And of course, he didn't know if he was coming back. He didn't know how long he'd be away. And they were afraid that the Nazis were going to take all the good wines that he had in his library in the estate. So what they decided to do before he left for the war was they dug a big hole behind the vineyard, and they buried all the best wines. And that's the only way they could think of keeping those wines safe, and hopefully they'd survive. So they buried those wines. Gaston went away to war, and to make a long story short, he was in a POW camp for 5 years. And I could imagine every night when he went to bed, I bet you he thought about those wines. I bet you he thought, someday am I going to get home and try those wines? Or are those wines blown up? Has the Nazis found them? Or the minefields there, and have they been destroyed? But he served 5 years in a POW camp. And I guarantee you, every day he thought. So after 5 years, Gaston got released, and he made his way home. And part of the wine and war in France was all the young people in France either were crippled or they got killed, and most of the people left. Because World War I, they lost a lot of people. World War II, and there were very few young people left who had 2 legs and 2 arms. And that was very, very interesting to me. God, the whole country went through that. So he came home, and he didn't think odds against odds those wines were going to be there and they were going to be drinkable. So he got home, he dug up the wines, and they were there. And he was shocked. He was shocked. So he quickly opened up several of the wines, and they were marvelous. They were sublime. And think about how special that experience was. He was there in that prisoner of war camp for 5 years, and he thought about those wines all the time. How great they must have tasted. I wish I could have been there to taste those wines after all he went through. And think about how wine becomes part of your life and part of your culture. And that had to be an incredible experience. And that book, by the way, if you ever have a chance, read that book, Wine and War. They should make a movie out of that. There's other great stories there.